Domain, what we will do here is we will go task by task for each domain. As I mentioned, first domain people will have 14 tasks, and then domain 2 will have 17, and domain 3 will have 4 tasks. So I'll take you through each task independently. Domain 1, task 1, managing conflict. Within any organization, to move things ahead and to get the projects flowing, you will have to make two or more teams working together. So a manufacturing team working with a team of quality, the logistics team working with the supply chain colleagues, coders working with testers. Many such examples can be given. So each of these separate teams are going to have their own priorities within the project, and they are different from one another. And if the teams are involved in multiple projects, these priorities are much different. So what happens when two such parties with different priorities join hands for a common task? There will be differences of opinion. I hope you all agree. So one team will say, we do things our way. Let's say the quality team says we need 100% inspection because it makes sure my customer is safe. And the other team, let's say the production team, they will say, no, it's important that the same customer that we're talking about gets all the required number of products as quick as possible. So we cannot waste time in checking the 100% parts. Hence, they propose we do a sample testing instead. So both of them are right from their own point of view. But when it comes to organizational benefits, both these options have to find a compromise. So now these little differences of opinion, if not taken care at an earlier stage or a smaller stage, they will grow and then they will start becoming conflicts. The conflicts are serious disagreements between two stakeholders or two teams. So I said stakeholders here, and it doesn't mean both these stakeholders have to be from different teams, but the conflicts can also happen even within the team. So imagine some work is given for two colleagues because it's too difficult to be handled alone. So if you do not define the deliverables of each of these colleagues, there will always be conflicts. Also the case when the work of a stakeholder is dependent on the work of another stakeholder, and then there is a constant delay in the delivery because of which the work of the other stakeholder is getting delayed. So that's another reason for conflict. So the project manager has to solve these conflicts. In fact, this is one of the most important purposes of having a project manager's role in the organization. I hope you all agree. And the PMI expects the project manager to solve this task of conflict management using the three enablers mentioned here. What does it say? Interpret the source and stage of the conflict, and then analyze the context for the conflict, and then evaluate or recommend or reconcile the appropriate conflict resolution solution. Interpret the resource and the stage of the conflict, right? We need to identify the root of the problem and to what level this has gone to. If the stakeholders has already escalated these things to a higher level, it's much worse to handle. So we need to be involved in the disagreement as early as possible. And we as project managers need to analyze the context to understand what actually started the conflict. And finally, we need to also recommend a solution to the problem. Remember one thing here, as a project manager, you are not the expert of the functional area, right? We all know, and even the teams know that you are not an expert of that problem. So when we say we need to resolve the conflict, it doesn't mean that you have to sit down and resolve the coding error. So you have to bring both the stakeholders or teams together and then make them clear, the misunderstanding. I know it sounds very difficult to bring two people to come to an agreement. We'll learn about how to deal with these, we'll go much into detail about what these different stages of conflict are, how we can interpret the conflict, when we should be escalating these things, what actions for what type of conflicts. We move to the next topic. Domain 1, task 2. This task is one of the biggest tasks from the list that we have from PMI for the exam. So as you can see, there are 7 enablers to perform this task. Let's see how it goes. So as every individual team is busy doing their own momentary work. So the individual stakeholders usually are not always worried about the final outcome of the project. It might sound, a bit harsh to put it this way, but that's the reality. And it doesn't mean that the stakeholders has no vision towards the work. It is clear for the stakeholder about what work she needs to do by the end of the day or by the end of the week, or maybe work that she needs to do to pass that review with the boss. She's always after those burning issues that is stopping her work. These daily hustles of individuals, of all the stakeholders within the team, are quite random and directed in every possible direction. So to move them all in one single direction, the project manager, he first have to get them on his board to the journey that is unidirectional. So this way, everybody will have a common goal, a common purpose, and all the work done by each member in the board is going to take the whole organization forward in that desired direction. Too much philosophy, right? I know. So how does PMI wants us, the project managers, to do this? I'm reading out loud the task and the enablers. So for leading a team, we have to set a clear vision and mission. We have to support the diversity and inclusion. We have to value the servant leadership. We have to determine an appropriate leadership style. We have to inspire, motivate, and influence the team members or stakeholders. We have to analyze the team members and the stakeholders' influence. We have to distinguish the various options to lead various team members and stakeholders. Moving on, domain 1, task 3. This is a bit interesting topic. We all agree that the project manager is not the boss of individual teams. The role of the project manager is mainly to ensure that the team gets the direction, to make sure that the people are getting all the resources, and to ensure that the organization needs are met. But the PMI wants the project manager to evaluate the team. So that's the interesting part, because as a project manager, you need to manage the individual against her deliverables towards the project, and then help her understand where she is in terms of her goals and targets against that particular project. So this assessment, it will be different than what her boss would assess her, but it will actually help the team or the individual stakeholders to understand if we are actually slow in the process, or if we are not meeting the level of quality of the deliverables, and they can work on improving themselves with these assessments. When an individual does a self appraisal, or the appraisal with her manager, only the individual performance with respect to her own work is assessed. But as the project manager, we always have to make this assessment in terms of achieving the objectives of the project. So let's see what the PMI wants us to do in this task.